another monthly Orienteering USA forum. This month, we're fortunate enough to have Glen Tryson, who's in charge of OUSA's course consulting for NREs, to talk to us about how that process works and between the course designer and course consultant, and how they try to give us the best designed courses that are possible for NREs. As usual, this session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable being recorded at all, leave, or avoid showing your face or speaking up as required to be comfortable. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand at any time during the presentation, and Glenn will deal with it the next time it seems convenient, or you can put questions or comments into the chat. With that, Glenn, please start sharing your screen and we'll get underway.
Okay, thanks, John. All right. We have a screen. Does everybody see my my slide there, first slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, as John said, we're going to talk about the kind of NRE course design process and where the course consultant comes in and what they can do. Just to elaborate a little bit more on John's intro, for those of you who don't know me, I've been orienteering 30-some years, set my first national level course about 20 years ago, and then got involved with the course consulting process probably 15 or so years ago. So I've been doing this for a while, and hopefully have gained a little bit of wisdom in the process to pass along. But just today I want to talk about a few things here, cover up what the course consultant's role is, what the actual course consulting process is, and how to use it, and what the timing is and timeline on that, and then a little bit about how course designer and consultant should work together to kind of optimize quality of courses. And then towards the second half, we'll get into some examples of kind of consultant working with the course designer on some specific examples, and there will be maps. So those of you who can stick with it till then, there'll be maps in the second half. The course consultant is someone who's a volunteer. He's appointed by the course consultant committee, which is defined in the USA rules. But in reality, the course consultant committee is a committee of one with a loose network of people who support me on that and are the people who volunteer to do the course consulting. And basically, after the sanctioning process occurs, that's when the course consultant is appointed. And what the kind of responsibility, if you will, of the course consultant is to work with the course designer more or less as a quality control person to make sure that the courses meet the requirements. And if you look, the first three bullets there are, you can see my cursor now. Yeah, the first three bullets are things that are specified in the rules that the course consultant is just assuring that the courses are designed at the appropriate navigational level, and also target winning times. So they have to work with the course designer who's the guy out in the field to kind of come up with the proper distances and lengths of that. And then they're also certainly making sure that, depending whether it's sprint, middle, long, or what the particular nature of the course is, that the courses meet that requirement. And something that we don't get into in designing local courses so much, because you usually start and finish near your registration point, is actually making sure that the start and the finish are at locations that really optimize the quality of the courses and also work for the logistics. The rest of the bullets there are kind of things that are nice to do and are actually the kind of the more fun part of doing the course consulting. One is make sure that things are fair, that the controls are fair, not like a bingo control where it might be, a pit hidden in thick vegetation, and so it stumbled upon by luck. And then dog legs, course routing, where other runners might give away the location of a control. So feedback from the consultant can be important to help designers see some things that they might not have seen their first time around. Now, one thing I certainly look at when I look at a course from a consulting perspective is from a safety perspective, because you can have maybe create some nice legs, but also have to deal with some hazardous areas, road crossings, water crossings, cliffs, things like that. And certainly on the courses, the white, yellow courses that the kids are on, you want to be aware of that kind of safety issues that might be presented by a particular course design. And usually it's not too hard to work around things like that. Maybe it's just add another control to draw people away from a hazardous area. And the final bullet there is that the course consultant is going to work with the designer to actually for course improvement. So that's kind of the getting involved with the course design, but again, leaving the course setter to his designs, his or her designs to actually they own the courses and the designs of the courses. Course consultant's not, of course, a substitute for a vetter, which is a person who's on the ground in the terrain, giving feedback on, what might be shortcomings in the map, appropriate control locations, because just sitting, looking at a computer screen at a map, you're not going to be able to necessarily pick up whether, you don't know if the mapping's good or not, but you hope so, as people have decided to use it for a national ranking event. But there may be some areas that the map doesn't accurately reflect what's going on. And certainly the vetter makes sure that control placements are indeed correct. Just get in and spend some time on what the actual process is. It's an iterative process. The first step there certainly, hopefully, happens before sanctioning and even as mapping is being completed, where the quality of the terrain, the quality of the map are being assessed to really determine if it's even appropriate to hold a national ranking event there. So hopefully by the time the event gets sanctioned, the course setter already has some ideas in mind as to what he'd like to use for courses. But that next step there would be to, where the designer and before a lot of the course design is done, there's a discussion that happens with a consultant to identify the start, finish locations and kind of general course flow, what some of the general legs be, particularly longer route choice legs or nice areas of forest that you want to use for your courses. And then you get into the iteration where it's kind of back and forth between the consultant and the designer, where designs presented, get feedback on it. At the same time, the course designer is out in the field checking control sites, again making sure that the map reflects what's in the terrain, and feedback giving, or the consultant giving feedback to help guide that overall design, and whether it's tweak control positions to improve a route choice leg, change some of the white or yellow legs to make them more appropriate for the course, the level of the navigation for the course. And again, we'll get into that in some of the examples. And then usually the deadline or the end of the thing here is that the courses need to be finalized and maps need to get to a printer. So that leads us into what's the actual timeline involved in this whole process. So first, I think the consulting will say a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks for that cyclical part, the iterative part of the process. The reality, you can probably do it in 2 to 4 weeks, and often that's what happens. Ideally, 4 to 6 months. So you're, have plenty of time to be out in the field and get feedback and allow the consultant and course setter to, actually live the rest of their lives and not be, have to spend all their time in a tight period doing, getting their courses designed so they can get maps to the printer. I said 1 year plus for championship events. Maybe that's not so much for the consulting process, but certainly if you're going to do an event in any terrain that has seasonal variations, which is a lot of the U.S. here, you want to be out in the terrain, looking at it in the conditions that you're going to see during the event. So that kind of gets you into that 1 year time frame. And certainly, if your maps are finished, you want to be thinking about, how you might route courses, and at that point in time, or again for a big event. Now, the problem with the overall timing, the requirement for sanctioning is that the application has to be in 8 weeks ahead of the actual event. So figure it takes 2 weeks to get through sanctioning. Then there's a time lag, a couple weeks to get a consultant assigned. And then you need to get your maps to the printer 2 weeks before the event. You do the math and you find that it's a pretty tight time window. So even that 8 week minimum, I guess I would ask event organizers to, get as much time before that as you can so that the consulting process has time to play out and really to, get the time, have the time to get your courses as good as they can be. Just some advice I make sure you think of the consultant as really an advisor or a mentor. He has no, authority to demand that you change your courses as much as we might like to. Ultimately, the courses are owned by the designer, and so I'd say talk early, talk often between the consultant and the designer. Even if it's just informally, emails back and forth, talking on the phone, in person if you have the opportunity at a meet to get together. Responsibility, I'd say, as the designer is to, be open to suggestions, ask the questions, discuss ideas with the consultant. And the consultant's responsibility is to, get back quickly so that you can get to the designer can get out. If he needs to get back out in the field, can do that promptly and kind of get the next step of the process moving along. And again, just courses are owned by the designer, not by the consultant. All right. Any questions up to this point? I haven't seen any hands pop or anything. Questions, comments, and then we'll get into some examples. If anybody's got anything.
I have a couple things that one of the issues that often happens associated with, I've done course consulting for a long time. One of the things that seems to happen is that a course designer will solve one problem and create another. And they're focused on one problem, and then it's like the consultant says, well, wait a minute, there was another issue here. You created an issue. And it's like, you didn't really know that, you didn't look at that. And so that's something which happens as you're course designing. In some of my examples, or some of the things I have dealt with, is that a person has a really wonderful long leg. And the long leg then goes 100 meters across a trail or a road. And it's like, well, all you do is run to the road and figure out where you are, and you get there. And so I have suggested in those occasions, you put the control before the road so that they end up then having to figure out how they're going to get there. And so some of those things are, I think, things which course consultants end up doing. I also have one memorable time when I was looking at courses in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, where the courses came down off a hillside and then ran along this long trail. It's like, what the heck are you doing? This is totally stupid. And the answer from the course designer was that we needed to make sure everybody came down off that hillside and went along the trail and crossed at one particular spot, because if people were running down the road, the park people would say you would never be able to use this map again. So, there is stuff on the ground which people know and need to deal with that the course consultant doesn't. And so therefore the course consultant really is just somebody who asks questions. Does this make sense? And in this particular case, it obviously made sense because they wanted to use the map again.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Good input. And just, to reemphasize, is like, when you're sitting at your computer just looking at maps, you don't know all the situations, and hopefully the guys on the field, both the course designer and his vetter, are more aware of what's going on and what they can do. I see Mike Minium has his hand up, so Mike.
Yep, I'll just say, with having designed courses for quite a few national ranking events, 20 some years of flying pigs and a few other events, that I've appreciated the OUSA course consulting process. I've found a great deal of variation in the consultants that I've worked with. And I think that's something that, you need to anticipate as a course designer, is sometimes you get a consultant who's basically what they'd call in business a yes man, who, everything looks okay, cool. And other times you get a consultant who's very, very detailed. And, I do like having a consultant that's giving a lot of feedback and suggestions, because sometimes that outside perspective, they see things that you, being familiar with the map, may not see. A lot of times they suggest things that aren't practical, such as your example of running on the trail or the road, just because they're not physically in the terrain. But it is a very valuable process. And, I think sometimes people go in with a little bit of fear that the consultant, and it shouldn't be a fearful process. It should be a process of working together to create the best possible courses. And it also shouldn't be a process where the course setter, course designer, takes immediately every suggestion that the consultant offers, if they have knowledge of the terrain and the experience, that says maybe this isn't the best. So thanks again. I went a little longer than I intended there.
Yeah, thanks,
Well,
Mike.
I would like to add that I have worked with Mike on a number of courses and or events, and the conversations have been wonderful. I ask questions, he has answers. Sometimes he says, "Oh, yeah, I really should do that," and other times he says, "No, I don't need to." And it's the asking of questions that then says, is this right? And yeah, it is, or maybe I should change it. And Mike has been exceedingly wonderful in making those changes.
Okay, thanks, guys. Good input.
Thanks, Peter.
Just to kind of reiterate or take the other point of view, is like, you also get a variety of course designers as a consultant, and as how much how much input they're willing to take, and so that's a kind of more on the consultant to try to balance things and kind of understand his audience, and to the extent we can kind of pull out and help and get people to cooperate, and work with us but again, two-way street. We're both kind of all have the same goal, and that's to make the courses the best they can be. So, all right, we'll move on and look at some maps here. Got several examples here of things where just kind of a course consultant designer interaction, and kind of a few problems here. We'll leave it open to people to kind of take a look at things. This first one is was looking at the start location. This is from a recent event out at Red Rocks Canyon, which if you're those of you who might have been there a couple of years ago, did U.S. long distance U.S. champs there. They did a one-day NRE here back in December, and I was involved with consulting. And I apologies to anybody, any examples I use here who the course designers might feel that I'm, kind of pointing out their deficiencies, but that's certainly not the intent. We just, there are examples that I was able to pull up or that were fresh in my mind and sort of look at them. So I guess the question I'd say here is like, this is where the start location was proposed, and what could we do better? The lines that are shown are our first legs on the advanced courses. All of the white, yellow, orange courses all headed out to the north, more or less along that trail heading north. So if anybody, or I can jump to the answer slide here. And one thing, if we, let's see if I can.
Looks like going to 130 is not a great start.
Yeah, just a little more information there. That nice yellow area near the finish is the parking area. So you're right next to the finish there too. Here we go. We got a cursor. Okay, this is the parking area, and then so people are going to be assembling in here, if you will. So that's not great. The other thing, we can get to the next slide here. No, technical difficulties. Can't get my cursor off. Okay. One thing, the start was kind of located here just in the middle of the trail, not in a very well-defined location. And actually the start triangle should be located on a specific feature enough that you could actually describe it as using a control description. So we moved it up here onto this bend in the trail, which was an easy move. It kind of keeps it still close to the parking. And the other thing it accomplished is it gets up closer to this ridge line here, so that runners, as they leave the start, are disappearing from sight, so that people waiting to start who haven't run yet won't, so much see which way people are headed to their control. With the start more down here, especially the green leg, the one that heads out to the east, people would stay low and maybe even down below this spur to climb a little bit. So subsequent runners on green would be able to see which way they're going. Just another comment while we're on this, while you're placing start. Now the finish in this situation looks fine to me because it's kind of close to the assembly area. Nice to have an arena so that people could see runners coming in and know when they finish. Remote starts, sometimes you need to do them, but if you can avoid them, I think it's better to have it more as an arena situation. Other things to think about on start placement is, are you able to do a white course and a brown course from there? Because if you do a white course and get back to the finish using appropriate handrails, you need to be able to do that. A brown course, if you can design an advanced level brown course using that start location, then any of the other advanced courses shouldn't be a problem because you got more distance to work with on those. All right. Oops, sorry about that. Next example is looking at a white course. Again, same event. This is the white course. So first, we think this is an appropriate design for a white level course, considering you want to be primarily on handrails. This is designed for 10 and 12-year-olds. This is their competition level. And then what do you think we should change on this?
4 to 5 looks a little scary.
If I was a 10-year-old, it'd be really scary. Yeah, a couple things. That whole second part of the course coming down the broad wash there. My first question back to the course designer was, how obvious is that wash to a 12-year-old or 10-year-old? And when he got out there and he decided that probably wasn't an appropriate way, but certainly 4 to 5 is the kind of scariest of the legs there, because I think once they get into the wash, they'd be okay. The other thing I see, 3.7K is on the long side. Now, this is pretty fast terrain because it's wide open. Those washes are, even though they're mapped as marshes, they're really sand, soft sand probably. So it's on the long side. And of course, I assume this got corrected by the time they went to print, but you really don't want to have control descriptions that are in the international symbols. You need to have them in English so people can, so the kids know what they're looking for. And then here's where it actually ended up. We did a couple of iterations, and there were a couple of suggestions about how to do this. And, we talked about using possibly taped legs, where certain legs were marked. Of course, it's considerably shorter. This wash is visible in the terrain, reasonable to expect to be used as a handrail, particularly with the control here just at the head of it. What they did that it kind of happened without getting my input on is they ended up using a map flip, which I would hesitate to do for a beginner level course. But they flipped the map at number 5, so it got rid of this possible confusion of 3, 4, 3, 6, 4, 5 here. But again, I didn't hear any negative feedback, so I guess it worked and people could figure out what to do with the map flip. For those of you who might not be aware, this symbol in the control descriptions of a map flip is fairly new and certainly is a useful symbol to be able to use in the control descriptions. And I guess the one other thing is, I think from the discussions, the designer hadn't really been out in the terrain other than at some earlier events to look specifically at the courses before we started talking about them. So once they got out there, they found out kind of a little bit of the reality and some other things. Other courses had to be changed too. All right, move on to the next one. There's a brown course. This is a brown course from West Point earlier this year, or last year, I guess. Last year it would have been. It was a middle distance course. This is fairly near the end of the course. Off the north end here is where the finish was. Controls 9 and 10. Anybody think those are appropriate or inappropriate for brown, and why? Oh, you're still trying to see what's inside the circle because they're way too busy. this was 10 was described as middle cliff. I think by my count there are 11 cliffs in there, and I think this 9 was also a middle cliff. Now the other issue is brown runners aren't great at climbing hills, particularly if they're rocky. It's even harder to come down hills that are rocky. So the exit from 10 to most brown runners was pretty scary, um, because you've either got to get down to this road or side hill across. And those of you who are familiar with West Point terrain, this is a simplification. There's a lot more rock in there than even the map shows. So again, I didn't consult on this. This is kind of an after the fact. I ran this course. My suggestions would be to probably take this control and move it further to the west on one of these features that's near the edge of the circle, so that the brown eyes can pick up what the feature actually is, rather than my approach was to go get into the circle and start looking behind pieces of rock to see a lot by using a feature, say this cliff or one of these cliffs, as the control feature, so that now the leg comes on this side of the hill, and you've got, the exit is down across relatively unrocky ground, not a steep slope down, and into this control. The next leg I think is appropriate in that it's really just a traversing leg to get people down this 5 contour or so drop through rocky ground. You drop to the road and right up down the road to get there is appropriate. It's a relatively short leg doing that.
One thing that I would add is that, the way it is set up here, people who run at a 9, they're basically going to run back down the hill, run the road, run up to 10, run down to the road, run down the road, get up to 11. And so it is in many ways a very uninteresting leg for people who are good orienteers, although they don't want to run blue distance.
Right. Agree that, the whole 9, 10, 11, 12 sequence there is you could, jump from the control out to the road, run a road, go in, get the control, jump back out, although you're not going to jump from 10. You climb your way back out. So that's another reason that moving the control over here then makes it, people have to navigate through the woods, and on both of these legs, there's really no trail option to go for. And just since Peter brought it up, is even though the brown course is a shorter course, we
You seem
Can
so
you hear
frozen.
us, Glenn? We can't hear you at the moment or see your presentation.
really do want to have the, I'm sorry, what? Couldn't hear you, John.
Okay, sorry, you're back, sound and picture. You were gone for half a minute.
Okay, did you hear Peter's input?
I think you were the only person trying to talk during the outage. So,
Well, Peter's voice was going in and out for a while there. Okay, so
okay.
Peter, face your mic when you talk. All right. Okay, yeah, you can hear me okay now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What I've got is a series of slides here. Just to kind of shiner. This is a kind of. And so I take a look at this leg, the first leg, and then also the fourth leg here, and sixth leg, and then we'll talk about what's going on up in here a little bit later. Legs, 600-700 meter legs, and any
Glenn, it may end up
thoughts
helping if you
on
turn
what
off
might
your
be
video.
changed to make these? I mean, I'm sorry.
It may help if you turn off your video because you seem to have issues of transferring information.
Okay, I'm not sure what you want me to switch off, but
Switch off your video. We don't need to see you. We need to hear you talk and see what your
I
issues
can't
Turn off
are.
your
see.
camera.
It's the
Turn off your camera.
It's the camera logo in the lower part of your screen.
That one.
Yep, you got it.
Yep, you got it.
All right. And you can still see my slides, right?
We can.
Yeah. Okay. There. All right. So comments, thoughts on what you might do for this leg, or this leg. Or we'll just jump ahead. We'll talk about it. What I saw on the first leg is a really long trail run, because especially early in the course, I don't think anybody's going to plunge right into the woods to take a straight line here. So there's probably 500-600 meters of running, kind of dead running down the trail before people are going to jump off into the woods, either like here or maybe even further. And then similar on this leg, although it appears to have a route choice out to the right versus left, it's much easier to get to the trail and run the trail around than cross a couple of reentrance systems to try to get out here, and then you don't know what this looks like. Maybe you'd come out and come through here and pick up the trail. So my feedback on the first go around was now what's shown as the blue course, where I suggested they add a control early on. At that point, I wasn't considering that the vegetation, which looks like it could be pretty nasty down in here, and it turns out there was a limitation as to whether they could use this side of the creek at all. But essentially the suggestion was to add a control there to get them into the woods quicker, and then make the route largely a woods leg. The other leg we're looking at, this leg, 3-4 leg, instead of being an easy trail run, again, add another control to pull them down more, so that they then have to make this route choice of going around the vegetation, coming out here and around, but certainly keeping them away from this long trail run coming to this one. And then this leg, I thought was pretty good, in terms of having a couple options on how to go, how long you spend on this trail. I think I might have suggested that they even drop this control and maybe use the one down here, so make it a even longer leg. But again, that kind of gets you to favor the trail there. Talk a little bit about this area again. I also thought that it might be a good idea to not just have them bounce out to this trail and then run through the trail. This area in particular was was mowed trails, and the vertical green between it was stuff that you really didn't want to go in at all. So they kind of had to traverse this area, and they wanted to, being the middle of summer, they wanted to have a water stop that everybody went to, that was well staffed and supplied there. But my suggestion was just bring a control down here so they spend more time in the woods and not time out, kind of running between trails. Right. And then go ahead.
One of the things that I try to do when I'm course consulting is to, if I am going to try to have a change in the course so that, in your first leg, you wanted to have a control out there, or the fourth leg where you added one so you didn't have the long trail run, I try to have an existing control there that can be used so that you're not going to have to go and revet your courses, revet or find some new control sites. And so therefore I'm trying to make the thing easier. At the same time, there's sometimes when I believe that it is necessary to have more controls, especially in the finish area, so that you don't have everybody going through two controls. If you can find another fewer places to have people so that there are at least 3 or 4 controls right before the finish, that's advantageous.
Yeah, just to emphasize what Peter said, because I do this similar thing as I'm suggesting, kind of changes, alternate legs on a course. I always try to use controls that they've already, picked and presumably have vetted, so that you're using the valid control. Because if you go out there and start suggesting that the course designer go out and find 30 different controls and they've already spent several hours, days maybe out in the field, that's just kind of counterproductive. So I try to use suggest legs that use existing controls, and in particular with this, because in addition to the red, we had it was kind of a limited event. It was a red, green, brown, because it was Pan Am Masters games. But certainly the other courses came into play, so there were other control locations out there to possibly use. And probably some of these that I don't think I'm not sure what I even put. I think I suggested this control, and then the map got updated, because it really doesn't look like it's on a feature or has a very hospitable control location. So okay, so then I got sent this off to the course designer, and he spent some more time in the field and came back with this design, which is shown in purple, realizing that this green area was not someplace he really wanted to send people, but he did adopt the in kind of an earlier, shorter first leg to get people off the trail. Kept them in whitish woods here, so that was nice. And then something that occasionally happens, and when you're doing your course design and you want to look at this leg here wasn't in his original courses, but it was on his green course, or it was something that we had discussed using on the green course, and it fit quite nicely into this as a kind of good navigational leg, a couple different routes on what might be best to get there, and bringing runners down into this area to set this leg up that we had suggested. And then there was a minor change on this leg to probably just a different control placement. Certainly, rather than the stream bend, you used a reentrant. And again, I think even a lot more distance on this leg, I think could have kind of benefited that leg. Decided, and I'm not sure we discussed this, to just kind of do a straight into this water control here, but now that's set up quite a bit of a trail leg running in. I would have probably kept something here or some intermediate control to break that leg up a little bit. But just trying to show here that kind of going back and forth and bouncing ideas around works. And I think here we ended up with a better course for what it is. And additionally, the initial course, if you remember, had just kind of a little crossing leg in here. Here's kind of got 2 short legs that actually make it a little bit less dog leggy as runners go around there. All right. Next. All right. For those of you who were on the call a couple weeks ago, where we talked about route choice at down at the Georgia Navigator Cup this year, we talked about this leg from 6 to 7, which is a good leg. There were, options, left and right options that people took, and we spent a bit of time discussing that. But as we looked at it, it occurred to me that we could actually drop control 6 and make that a longer leg from 5 to 7. Control 6 was like a 4-meter boulder. So other than kind of going, contouring around to the left, maybe going up around from the top, finding the control was pretty straightforward. But now if you drop control 6, you've opened up this route choice coming around to the left, which I think some of the longer courses had. You still preserve kind of a stay high to the right and use the contours, go up there, and certainly the up and down on the straight line. And I like kind of that as an option, because I always try to think when you design a brown course, you usually have about 3K total distance to work with, depending on the terrain. If you can work in a long leg that's again, for a classic or a long distance course, a leg that's maybe 800 meters to a kilometer on that course, you're going to have that one long route choice leg. But that gives the brown runners that kind of same navigational challenge, or choosing the route choice that you're able to incorporate into the other advanced courses. And then just one other thought here is like every control that you don't have to hang a bag out in the field is less work for the organizers. It's one less to check, one less to put out, and one less to pick up. So always like to do that.
I have a recollection of one course that I was consulting where there was this leg that they set up, which if you went the straight line was basically 1.5 kilometers of absolutely fantastic orienteering. Really technical, wonderful. However, around the edges of it were trails. And so most orienteers would have said, I'll go a trail because it'd be a hell of a lot easier. And so my recommendation was to put a control somewhere in the middle of the trails, so that you ended up having to orienteer through the great orienteering terrain. And the designers ended up taking me up on that, and I think that everybody enjoyed those courses a whole lot more than just running trails. So sometimes adding in control is really useful, and sometimes in this particular case, you could remove that number 6 and have it a better course.
Yeah, agree. Oh, I mean, I think the first courses I set 20 some years ago, that's the thing I remember learning from the consultant was like, always look and decide, do you need that control? Can you drop the control out? Does it make the leg better? And then to Peter's point is sometimes adding a control back in can make, even though it's a shorter leg, it might not have the route choice. It certainly could make it a more technical leg. All right, shifting gears, since we do sprints too. This is a little bit contrived because I couldn't find good examples, but I drew up a little sprint course just to illustrate a couple of places where you might want to, sprint courses, look at some safety considerations. One is the risk of runners colliding with each other, going in and out of control in a dead end. And then the other is certainly road crossings. There's a lot of paved area on this map. And, as hopefully the meet organizers know where traffic's going to be and not be, but, you want to ask that question. Control 2 here, I set up to be what I think is like a situation that's just asking for collisions. It's a narrow passageway. It has a blind corner if the control's, tucked around in the back there. people are going in and out the same way. So, if you can avoid that, I mean, I think you could easily move this to this tree here and not really affect the route choice on the control or the difficulty of the control. I mean, typically a sprint would probably have certainly longer and more complex legs than this, but just something to think about as you're looking at the courses. And this is also in and out, but I think it's probably okay. One, it's somewhat wider, shorter. It's as soon as you enter this passageway, you should be able to see the flag, and then people are going to exit coming out this way, so they're not kind of you're not coming around this corner blind as somebody comes out there. And then certainly putting your finish chute across a road, you want to where people are just going to be making a dash to the final to the finish control. You want to look at understand whether there's traffic there or not. Okay, got one more.
Would that be more or less dangerous than if they were going to be exiting a control immediately into a road crossing, trying to read their map, do you think?
I'd say you'd want to avoid both of those situations. I mean, like here you've got a road.
So would the fix be to move 4 to the north side onto closer to the finish?
Yeah, if this is an active road here, I would move 4 across here because people are going to be kind of just blindly running down that chute. Or do something with traffic control. There. Yeah, Mike raised his hand, so go ahead,
I'd
Mike.
also consider trying to cross the road at an angle rather than directly perpendicular. Because if you're coming perpendicular, if there's a car coming, then you have the incentive to try to beat it. If you're crossing the road at a very shallow angle over 50 or 100 meters, you have the option to, stay on one side while the car passes and then pass behind it, or it gives you a little more option if you can consider that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Mike. I agree, and that also goes for forest events where you might have a road crossing. Hopefully, not a busy road. And if it's a busy road, there's different considerations. But a lightly traveled road, yeah, you always set it up so that things aren't perpendicular. There's you kind of have a decision as to when to cross, so you can time the traffic there. Good point. Thanks. One other one. Again, this is from the West Point event. This was on the red course, and just kind of does a whole bunch of things. Not to pick on the West Point cadets, because I know they're all relatively inexperienced, but this one just jumped out as kind of having a couple things to illustrate. One is dog leg, runners can see going in. We're going to see where runners are coming from. Don't know how deep those pits are, but they certainly offer the opportunity to hide the control. And then the whole leg is a jump out to the road and run downhill on asphalt, which I don't think that's a pleasant situation for most people. Now, there were several controls in here. It was just funneling people into the finish, but it probably would have been a little more. I mean, even for a red course, I think you could just drop this control altogether and let people come down. Make the judgment to not come down across a cliff and rocky ground, but rather to loop around some way. Although I suspect this hill is still pretty gnarly to come down. All right. Just to wrap up, summarize here. A consultant's there to help you out to do better courses. He's not an overseer or a dictator, I hope, but gives you somebody to bounce your ideas off of and to maybe see things with a different pair of eyes, another set of eyes, and help you make sure those courses not only meet the rules, but are fun for the competitors. And then on the timing, it's, to really use the course consultant effectively, get your organizers to get their applications in, as far ahead of that 8-week deadline as you can, so that you've got plenty of time to work with the consultant. So that's it. Questions? I'll thank everybody who gave input. It was gave me a chance to rest my voice, and had a lot of good ideas that maybe I didn't hit on. All right, thanks.
I'll start with a question. Others can raise their hands to get in line. Ideally, at what point would you like the course consulting to start, in terms of, should the course designer have gone into the terrain and vetted control locations? Would you rather be talking to them even before they've decided where to put the start and finish? Or
I think
they want
to. It's fine if they vetted control locations, I think. Because hopefully they're, kind of looking at some of their, what they're going to use for longer legs or sections of the forest that they want to make sure the courses go through. But, I'd say you want to have, and certainly look at where your start and finish might be, and have some ideas on that. But kind of before you get too committed on a course, it's probably good to have the discussion at least of where they're going to be starting. So, and then hopefully your finish is more or less controlled if you've got a nice arena to use or something like that. But again, the finish, if the finish requires that, people have 600 meters of dead running across a beach or something to get to it, I'd certainly consider doing a more remote finish than that. Right. Other questions?
One of the things, though, that you need to contemplate is, with the start, you need to make sure that you can have the white and yellow courses have appropriate courses. And in some cases, that's not possible. So the course designers end up having separate starts for the white and yellow, which is completely appropriate.
Again, the argument against that is just, kind of including the younger runners with the whole, don't segregate them off and, make them feel left out. But again, if it's appropriate for the courses, then, separate white and yellow is fine. And even, we've used separate orange, let's see, at the nationals for the middle distance, we had the white, yellow, and brown starting at one point, and the rest of the courses at a different point, for a variety of reasons. But we were able to do that.
I guess also in response to John's question is that the earlier that the conversation starts, the better. It never hurts to be doing it as early as possible.
Yeah. And certainly, you don't need to don't wait till you necessarily have a consultant, an OUSA official consultant appointed. If there's somebody else in your club or that does course setting, bounce your ideas off of them, and talk to people. Don't ruin it so that they won't be able to do the course. But always, I guess the bottom line is, talk to people, get input, get ideas. As the course designer, you still own it and can do what you feel you want to do, but get that input. Tori.
You're muted.
Good point. Got the camera and not the mic. I really appreciated your presentation, Glenn, and especially how you talked about that really vital relationship between the consultant and the course designer. I've done some NRE course consulting, but most of my consulting was actually through the Washington Interscholastic League. So Cascade has their own internal process for that. And I don't remember how many years I did it, but it was 8 events, one every 2 weeks. So you just went through this over and over and over. And I found that relationship was really critical. One of the questions I had was, I'm listening as we're talking, and I'm noticing we're talking about all our course consultants as he. And it made me think about, I was thinking back just mentally through what was my experience with WILE and who were the course designers who came through. And I realized that there really wasn't a lot of diversity across our group. Like, it was the usual people, and they were almost all men. And so one of my curiosities is, how do we encourage new people to try course designing, especially since we have, at the NRA level, after you've done some local events, we have this great process. How do we get more people to try this? And how do we reach out to people who may not think that's for me? Like, I can't do that. I don't see somebody else like me doing it.
I guess I don't have the answer to your question there, but thought occurred to me that, certainly if you have kind of a less experienced course designer who maybe hasn't done NRE courses, I would encourage them to, or their organizers to get the process started early. Because I think I probably worked across the gamut of people with experience levels as far as course designing goes. And certainly, there's a little bit more hand holding or coaching, mentoring that has to happen with somebody who hasn't, maybe they're not even, haven't even been to a lot of actual and national ranking events. So to help them, it's always great when they're enthusiastic, which they usually are. But the longer time frame you've got, the more you can work, and basically that becomes part of an education process for the course designer.
I would sort of add to that if you're going to be doing an NRE, you say, well, use other members of your club, use the course consultants. But if you're going to be the person who is going to be setting their first local meet, have them just talk to the other members of the club and and just start up a conversation, I think. And you're not doing this necessarily completely on your own. You have your ideas, but let other people talk to you.
At BOK, we're sort of in the process of trying to get meet directors do everything in our club. And we're trying to get them to find someone else in the club that's another director who can look their courses over in advance, because sometimes there's some really basic omissions where just a few tiny little changes can improve the course significantly. So
Yeah,
we've just try to get people
started
on a regular basis.
At the local level. DVOA and Quantico have just started kind of a chat group where people designing local courses can kind of just ask for help. And the reason we did it with the two clubs is so that there'd be a resource available that, somebody in Quantico land, isn't going to drive 3 hours for the local event. So they'd be willing to kind of give suggestions on the courses that somebody in DVOA is designing. Again, that kind of just got started, so don't have any feedback on that. Going back and addressing kind of something that Tori asked indirectly, there are at least two women I know of that are in my kind of loose network of people who do course consulting. But again, we could grow that. All we're looking at is people, experience setting courses at the, NRE level. And there's a certain level of interpersonal skills that are required because, you're working as a coach and a mentor. You have to be able to swallow your ego a little bit and not demand that courses be the way you want them to be. Other things?
Any last questions or comments? We're a few minutes over our theoretical hour, but that's fine. If no one raises their hand or speaks up in the next few seconds, then we're probably done. Thank you, Glenn, for your time and effort putting this together and the benefit of your decades of experience. And thank you to everyone for showing up.
Yep. Thanks for organizing.
Yep. Have a
Thank
good night.
you, Don. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks for your input, Peter.